I've always loved the 1vx, taking on a group of players completely by yourself. In a PvP game, there is no advantage as great and as absolute as a numbers advantage, and so turning that on its head feels like the pinnacle accomplishment for a solo player. Nothing expresses one's skill or highlights an outplay better than one man taking on an entire group by himself. Nothing says "I'm better than you" more than one woman beating an entire group single-handedly. So in this series, that's exactly what I set my sights on, the elusive 1vx. Welcome to One Man Army. In the first episode of One Man Army, I took outnumbered fights with 4.1 on the red zone to create a baseline for a build that could 1vx, a one-handed spear build focused on healing and mobility. In this episode, I went big. With full turret gear, I traveled deep into the black zone contesting power cores, treasure chests, and enemy groups with just me and my spear. This time, let's push the limits of what a solo player can do. The first opportunity I had was a fight over a medium chest not too far from the portal zones. After all the rats were dead, all that was left was me versus these two guys, a carving and a bloodletter. But I slapped them so hard they ran away, leaving me only with a latecomer solo player to kill. I continued to hang around the portal zones for a while and got into some nice fights. However, the problem with the portal zones is that I could never finish my fights. I'd get one kill and then within 10 seconds there would be at least 10 more players investing the skull in the map, and because I was a solo player in turret gear, I always became their target. But that didn't stop me from getting some pseudo-successes. Nice outnumbered fights, but ones where I only got to kill one player before being forced to leave. This is probably also a good time to mention that I was still changing up the build as I went, so you're going to see me using different things in these clips. The build from the first episode was more meant as a cheap placeholder to get a general idea for when I went out with more expensive options, and so almost no items were actually the same by the time I was done. This is the build I sort of ended on, although we'll get more into that later. For now, the Portal Zone fights were fun and good for content, but I still wanted that raw 1vx, where I take on a group and come out on top without getting third-partied and having to run. It proved to be very hard to find, but eventually this medium chest spawn out in the middle of nowhere brought me the opportunity for all the loot and glory I was seeking. Sadly, this last guy got away, but I was able to come out of this fight with 4 kills and 4.6 million in loot. Now while that was good, I sort of felt like the third party in that fight, and so I went back to the red zone in search of a more honest 1vx. And that's where I met these two gankers who had no idea what they were about to get themselves into. Now, technically, if we count the mob's help there, that was sort of a 2v2, so I kept looking and came across this chest spawn right outside Caerleon. I was hoping for a nice, every man for himself chaotic fight, but it just turned into everybody against me, so I kited away and killed off any pursuers. Finally, I came across this ganker and his two friends, which gave me an opportunity for a nice, honest 1v3. Honestly, this fight was barely even a challenge, but it felt good. This last guy was a pain in the ass to kill because of his undead cape, but he eventually went down, securing me the 1v3 and another couple million in loot. Honestly, when I was theory crafting this series, I was naive. I thought, or more was hoping, it would go something like this. but in reality it was far from it. If I've learned anything in life, it's that for everything there is an equal and opposite. When aiming for the top, the best solo PvP had to offer, I should have known that alongside it, I was also going to encounter the worst. As great fun as some of these fights have been, this series has been hell to make. I'm not going to go into too many details, but for every nice outplay, there was a wealth of stupid game design and balancing that ruined a fight. For every million made, there was 2 million lost. For every good moment, there were 10 bad ones. So for that reason, this is probably the last video in the series. There are some changes coming in the next patch, or probably the current patch by the time this video is out, that should make outnumbered fights a little better, but I have my doubts about how much it will actually be able to do. I'll try it out, but chances are this is the last video in the series. Now, I don't want to leave this on a down note, so I guess there's only one thing left to do. Cue the highlight reel.